In fact, one of our sometimes co-hosts on the program, one of our other lady co-hosts, Meg, has been apparently harassed big time at the airport. She went down south about a week ago. She went down to Florida to meet up with the Liberty on Tour guys, Adam and Pete, libertyontour.com. Of course, we've had them on the show a number of times, and she was getting ready to come back here tonight, come back to New Hampshire, when she posted a Facebook update saying she was escorted from the airport by about a dozen cops and 7 TSA agents, and now she's on the phone. Meg, are you there?
Yeah, hi.
Hey, what happened tonight?
So I went to the Fort Lauderdale airport to fly out of Miami here, and I was, one of the actually the only random person chosen for the body scanner. And so instantly I was just like, no, I'm not comfortable with that at all. So of course, they all start screaming at the top of their lungs, opt out, which instantly drew all the attention of the entire security area on me. And
I'd like to point out
there
real quick before this goes on, because this is kind of important. So you believe that you were the only one picked for this scanner, and you're like not an unattractive female, right? Like, so if
she's smoking hot,
right? If I was going to pick out of a plane full of people who to see naked, it might be you with maybe you'd be
it's
the
random,
top
Mark.
5.
What are you talking about?
Right.
It's random.
It's random, but they picked the hottest chick there.
Yeah. So when I told them I didn't want that, they all screamed opt out, and some lady came over starting to put on gloves already, and she grabbed my arm and started pulling me into this area, and I just kind of pulled away from her, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And she's like, well, if you opt out, I have to give you a full pat down. And I've read about these new pat down procedures that they have, which is, and I've gone through them as well, and it's like physical full palm on every area of your body, including on your breast. They have to squeeze and twist them.
What?
It hurts. It's getting to the point where I feel more physically molested than if some random guy actually came up and molested me. It's more intrusive than that. And
they're twisting on your breasts. I didn't even realize that was happening. I mean, it's horrifying.
Yeah. And so they put me in this little area, which is directly after both the body scanner and the regular magnetic detector.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody who goes through that has to go around this area that I'm in. And I'm just standing there, and this lady's screaming at me about the procedures, and I was like, okay, well, can I talk to your boss? Because I obviously couldn't get anywhere with her.
So you're basically front and center, in front of everybody that's coming through. They're all watching you.
They have to walk around me
in a little glass cell
to their ticket. No, it's just like a little roped-off area.
Okay.
It's directly after the metal detector. So anybody who walks out has to walk around that area to go get their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting there, and she brings out her manager, and the first thing she says to the manager is, this girl has all kinds of opinions on how we're doing our job wrong. And that's how she introduces the situation to this lady. So, of course, I try and ask her a question. I don't get 30 seconds into talking with this woman, and she runs away, and at that point there's at least 5 or 6 TSA agents surrounding me. And she comes back with a dozen cops. I sat there and counted them. There was 12 cops there. And I asked at one point if I could grab my camera. They wouldn't let me touch my stuff. They, at one point even took it back up to the gate of the airlines that I was flying with. So it was nowhere near me. And I'm just sitting there I had taken off my jacket, my shoes, all my jewelry, everything. And I'm trying to talk to the one officer who I guess they put in charge of the situation. And anytime I asked him a question that he didn't have an answer to, he would get really upset and just start yelling at me some more. And so finally they just cuffed me in the chair. And at this point, so many people are yelling at me. I don't know where my stuff is, and I'm just scared. And as soon as they go to do that, the original TSA lady who was going to give me the pat down just kind of not really whispers, but quietly so nobody else can hear, says, well, I can tell you one thing, and then she rips my airline ticket in half.
Wow.
Oh.
And
that's aggressive.
And what's the point in that? She doesn't get to control whether or not you have a ticket to the airline. She controls whether or not you can get to the gate. But that's really, these people are overstepping their bounds. Can they handcuff you without you being arrested?
Apparently.
I don't know, but they at least 4 different people were passing around my ID and, like, writing it down, doing background checks, while all the while at least 4, like 2 of the TSA agents, 2 of the cops, while I was sitting in that chair, at this point I'm shaking, I'm sobbing. I can't, like, wipe my face, so I just look like a mess, and everybody who comes through security is staring at me while these people give me a good 30-minute lecture on terrorism.
Yeah, really?
I could not handle it. Every moment I was just like, I do not care if these people are doing those things because it has nothing to do with me.
And they did all of this to you because you asked some questions, right? Like you refused, and then you took off your shoes, you took off your belt, you took off, you took off your jewelry, so you were complying with the procedure.
Yeah.
They just...
And all the while, because I was sitting in this area that was like the designated, secondary screening area, nobody else had to go through second screening because I was taking it up. So not one person the entire hour I was there had to deal with either the body scanner or the pat down. I was the only person, and because I had some questions about it, finally they just escorted me out of the airport.
No questions regarding our procedures. None.
I didn't know they were doing random body scans. I thought they were starting to make it so everybody had to go through that. That hasn't been implemented at all airports, I guess, yet.
Yeah, and it wasn't like the line was particularly long. There was maybe 4 or 5 people in front of me, 3 people behind me. That's it. And I was the only person out of that first group that was picked. And then, as the hour drug on, more and more people started arriving, but I was the only one.
Wow. I wonder what would happen if you just show up in a Speedo. I wonder what would happen, because this is what they want to reduce you to. However, they'd likely take it as an affront. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, then you'd get a charge for, being disorderly or something like that. And how strange that they would happen to choose Meg for this body scan. You chose to not be body scanned, and so then they all started shouting, "Opt out!" all around the security area, pulled you in.
Also in Spanish, since it's a very Spanish-speaking area.
So then they pulled you by your arm into a different, another area where they began doing the squeeze down, if you will, because apparently.
Well, I stopped them before they started that, just because I knew it was coming, and I was not comfortable with it, and so instantly I just said, no, I'm not comfortable with that. I have questions first,
Oh, I see.
And
so that you never got to the point of them actually doing the pat down?
No.
Okay.
It wasn't that I was intending to miss my flight. If that happened, I just I didn't want to blindly go, okay, feel me up.
Well, how did you know they were going to? You mentioned they were twisting your breasts, or they were twist. You knew that they would twist breasts. Had you heard that? Had you seen it happen?
I had read a few articles since these new procedures went into effect, I think a week or 2 ago. And also, I had seen videos and stuff like that. And before even this started, when, before I was even into the ideas of liberty, after 9/11, I would get random screening and they would do that. And so I just sort of knew it was coming, and I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to, allow them to touch me in ways that I'm not comfortable with. And they just, they would rather prefer to think that I'm insane than I'm a person with a logical question. And so they just treated me like an insane person and wouldn't even listen to me.
And then called in a dozen cops, 7 TSA agents to escort you out of the airport after tearing up your ticket in front of you and doing all of this, handcuffing you, putting you, sitting you down, handcuffing you. You're crying, making a mess of yourself. People, you can't wipe your eyes, and people are all around watching this as they're doing everything they can to bring attention to you, to make an example out of you, to show people in line, hey, you don't want to opt out, or else you'll have to go through this as well.
Yeah, and they wouldn't even let me touch my bags or put on my shoes or my jacket or anything until I was out, because they had all the 12 cops surrounding me with the 7 TSA agents carrying my stuff around them, walking me out of the airport. Everybody was being very loud about it and on their radios saying what they were doing and stuff like that. So everybody in the airport was just watching me be toted out by this massive, I don't know. It was like an army of government agents taking me out of the airport.
And the same thing happened to me when I was just just a little cantankerous with the people for a secondary screening. They circled me up with like 12 law enforcement officers of different level, TSA, local cops, and a dog. I mean, this is what they do. It's mental conditioning and psychological torture. And they can do. They're just trying to hold you out and say, look, other people, look. If you so much as look at us crossways, we are going to make your life miserable.
Well, Meg, you and I have a very different we have different personalities, and I'm such a loudmouth. They must just not want to deal with me because I'm, from the time that I step into the line, I start saying, "Don't you feel like this is Germany? They're having us undress and they're having us put our things." And I just go that route, from the very beginning. And they probably
I'm surprised
just want
you haven't had more trouble.
They just want to get me thrown out of there.
Well, and while we were sitting there for like the half hour when I was just on that chair crying, I kept trying to ask them questions that I thought, might touch them in ways that just the normal, this is Nazi Germany type statements will do. And one of the questions I asked was, how do you feel that sex crime victims feel about this procedure? Like, do you think this could have negative effects on them? And the cop, every answer he gave me was basically, it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about the greater good type thing. And I don't see how any good is gained by throwing people off to the side like that. Well, it makes no sense.
I don't see how there's any good gained by an organization that misses 50% or more of guns, knives, and bombs that it tests itself on. But this organization has to appear relevant to itself at the very least. That way they can feel like they aren't useless cogs in a useless machine.
To where, Meg, did they take you when you exited the airport? Did they just take you right out to the drop-off zone? Or?
First, they took me to like the ticket counter for the airlines that I was going through because at that point I had missed my flight, and so I had, no way home. And the airline manager was actually very, very kind, and he was just like, "We'll get you home. Don't worry," because I was a mess at that point, just shaking and upset. He's like, "We'll get you home. If you want to find a different airport nearby that doesn't have the body scanners, or if you want to come back tomorrow and try again and hope you don't get the special screening, whatever you need, we'll take care of it." And so he was very kind and accommodating.
And he was saying all of this with the police surrounding his kiosk or his table?
There was only 3 or 4 TSA and police at that point. I mean, some of them had left, and then once that was he printed me out a new ticket since I'd need the ticket to call in and exchange, and obviously I didn't have the original anymore.
Wow.
And so after that was all done and, I kind of calmed down a little bit, then the cops walked me out front to the departures, loading area, and told me to wait there, and managed to get a hold of Pete, and he was kind enough to come and pick me back up. But
that's really the reality, though. You, this person who at this point is the huge person of interest, tomorrow you can get your ticket again, go back, and the likelihood is that you will not be special screened. So, it's just random. It's just this stupid system.
But I don't understand, though, Meg, why didn't you have righteous indignation? Obviously you were crying and you felt victimized a bit and everything. I would have just been pissed.
Well, at first I was, but then once it got to the point where there was, 12 big guys with guns surrounding me, and I had nothing more, I couldn't even move, and they wouldn't let me touch my stuff. And, at one point I asked if I could get my camera, and they just started screaming, "Don't touch your bag," and what? And
as though you were some sort of, if you were a mad bomber, you could have just set off your